Hey everybody, so this week we're going to talk about Chapter 18, Renewable Energy. Alright, so last week we talked about fossil fuels, the different kinds of non-renewable energy like natural gas, coal, and oil. This week we're going to be talking about some alternative energy sources that people have been putting time into to try to see if they would be efficient enough to change our energy source to that energy. So some different types would be nuclear power, biomass and biofuel, geothermal energy, hydropower, tidal energy, solar energy, wind energy, and hydrogen energy. These are all the different types of energy that people have put time into to try to be able to convert these different types of energy into electricity that we would be able to power all of our technology using these sources instead of fossil fuels. The first one is nuclear power. So this is when you break apart the nuclei in order to create energy. So it's also known as nuclear fission. Anytime you're breaking apart the nucleus in order to generate electricity from the bonds in the nucleus, that would be nuclear fission. This produces heat from the reaction, which will produce steam, which will turn a turbine to produce the energy. All right, so if you look down here at the picture below, you're going to have a reactor where you're going to send a neutron into the nucleus of a specific atom. It's going to break apart those neutrons, which will release energy, which will go through the pipe right into the steam generator. So you're going to have water most likely in here. As the neutrons are being passed through, it's going to generate heat. Anytime you break a bond, heat is released. So when that happens, it's going to go through the pipe, right, release energy, creating steam instead of water, right? It's going to go into the gas form, which will travel through here, turn the turbine, which would be hooked up to a generator, which would then create the heat. So that's typically how they generate electricity from nuclear energy. So there are pros and cons to everything. All these different types of energies have different pros and cons. The advantages of nuclear energy is that it does not pollute the air, and you're going to see this with any type of alternative energy. It's not going to be polluting the air nearly as much, or if at all, compared to fossil fuels. Another advantage is a small amount of uranium can produce more energy than the same amount of coal. Alright, so if you put the same amount of coal and uranium in equal amounts into energy system, you're going to get a lot more energy out of the uranium, which is what they're going to use for nuclear energy, than coal is. So you get a lot more energy for the same amount of resource. Disadvantages: power plants are expensive to build and maintain, so you have to build all these power plants in order to harness this energy. You can have accidents at power plants. Two famous examples: Chernobyl, which happened over in Russia. They made a documentary on that. It's on HBO. I've only seen 2 episodes, but it was very good for the 2 that I saw. And then Japan, which happened in 2010, maybe, where a tsunami came due to an earthquake in the Pacific Ocean, came and launched a tsunami onto the power plant, creating havoc everywhere. So when these things have accidents, when these things explode, they release a ton of radiation. So it not only kills the workers who are there at the moment, but impacts the entire area, releasing radiation which can lead to cancer. So it affects the total environment when that happens. And it has happened before, so it's not like it's never going to happen. It definitely can happen, and probably happens more often than it should. The other thing that happens with nuclear energy is you have a nuclear waste. The waste that is given off from creating this nuclear energy is toxic, and there's no good use for it, and there's no good place to store it. Right now they just put it in large bins in a certain area, and they store it there, but there's no good way to get rid of the waste once we create it. So not the best option right now until we figure out how to get rid of that nuclear waste. All right, biomass and biofuel. This is like the old school way of creating energy. So biomass is material that makes up or comes from living things. So anything living that you use as material to create energy would be biomass. So it's used to generate heat, which can be used to generate electricity. Like you'll see with a lot of these different methods, generating heat creates electricity, and that's kind of how we know how to do it at this point for alternative energy. So when fuel comes from a biomass source, it becomes biofuel. All right, so if you're getting fuel from anything that is living, the biofuel, right? Bio means living, and then fuel is just regular fuel. So two examples are ethanol, and we kind of talked about this before. When you insert, sometimes when you're getting gas, you can see it says 10% ethanol, right? That just means that there was some biomass used in making that fuel, which is good because it's less oil, but it's bad because it's not as efficient. That's kind of the hindrance of biomass at this point. And biodiesel. So both examples can be mixed with gasoline to power vehicles. So they can be used, but like I said, they're not going to be as efficient. So advantages, again, no additional carbon added to the atmosphere. And usually when you're dealing with biomass or biofuel, you're usually burning that through either lighting it on fire. So if I harvest a whole bunch of wood, right, and I burned it, that would be creating energy through thermal heat. So just wanted to clarify that. Biomass can be found anywhere in the world, so it decreases dependence on other nations, right? These things that you grow in your backyard, whether it's wood, whether it's wheat, right? You can burn these things for heat. These things can be found anywhere. You don't have to go out and search for more of it. You typically can grow these things right where you live. Disadvantages, like I said, it's inefficient, so it only creates a small amount of energy, more than what it takes to create it. So the amount of energy that it takes to cut down these forests in order to burn, right, is less than what we're getting out of it. So it's super inefficient at this point. And indoor air pollution, mostly in developing countries. People who use fire in their homes in order to cook, right, or fire in their homes in order to heat, it's going to create all that smoke that's coming off the fire is going to create indoor air pollution. So you have to find a way to deal with all of that as well. All right, so once again, not a great source at this point unless we can figure out how to make it more efficient for the amount of energy spent on it. Geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is heat found beneath the Earth's surface. So geo, remember, meaning earth or rock. Thermal, it's usually heat. So that's how you kind of put those two together. So two ways that you kind of see these things are hot springs and geysers are a result of geothermal energy. A geyser is the thing that when you see water being launched out of the ground, that's what a geyser is. The most famous one is probably Old Faithful in Yellowstone National Park, where it launches at the exact time every single day. That's why they call it Old Faithful. So those are two of the ways that you see geothermal energy. And what power plants do is they harness this energy by capturing steam from the ground. So they're going to take that hot water, right, turn it into steam, which will turn the turbine in order to generate electricity just like it does before in other methods. Some homes can actually be heated by hot water directly. So if a certain house is built over a hot spring or an area where there's warm water underground, you don't actually have to heat that water, right? So it just you can take it directly from the ground as hot water. So that is helpful when you're near that kind of area. Advantages of this, causes less air pollution and less greenhouse gases. Disadvantages, power plants can run out of groundwater. Drilling can cause earthquakes. So sometimes when you can't access that geothermal energy right there at the surface and you have to drill deep for it, that's when you start to get earthquakes. And geothermal energy is not easily accessible, right? In most areas in the country, you're not going to be able to find this very easily. There's only certain places around the country where it's easy to find these things, and it's more out west where volcanoes are more popular. So yeah, that's pros and cons, right? As you can see, advantages: less air pollution, less greenhouse gases. Disadvantages: there's more disadvantages at this point than advantages, so not the best at this time.